Hello and welcome back to Conversations with Jacqueline A. Hines. Today my conversation is going to be with a lady called Natasha Stromberg, and the topic is going to be on inclusive feminism. And before I go into anything more, I just want to introduce Natasha and get her to sort of like outline what inclusive feminism is to you, the audience. So, hi, Natasha.
Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, and thank you very much for agreeing to have a conversation with me.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, brilliant. Great. Inclusive feminism. I've seen the term, but could you explain to us what it means?
Yes, I can. Well, I started using this term. I am a feminist. I say that quite openly. I've always believed that feminism was a force for good, that women's equality, which is what feminism is a force for good in this world. I think that women have so much to contribute, and our ideas are equally valid as men's. So I've always been a feminist, but what I've seen creeping in, and a lot of criticism of the feminist movement, particularly in the Western feminist movement, is that historically it has belonged to white, middle class and upper class women, and has been quite exclusive. So women of colour, black women, Asian women have not really seen themselves as part of the feminist movement, which I think is a shame. But I acknowledge that it from the outside, particularly in the UK, I think probably less so in North America, but in the UK, feminism is still represented largely by white middle-class women. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about intersectional feminism, which means, you know, where race, class, and gender intersect. But I think intersectional is a bit, I don't know, it doesn't really mean much to everyday people. It doesn't really mean that much to me. I didn't really know what it was initially. So for me, I call intersectional feminism inclusive feminism, because I think as women of the world, all over the world, feminism is a force for good, but it must be inclusive. It must include women of all ethnicities and of all class backgrounds, and resonate with everybody so that we can all rise together. And that's what inclusive means to me.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so I kind of made up this term. I don't know if I made it up, so I'm sure someone else has used it, but I felt that inclusive was a better description than intersectional, which sounded a bit pretentious, if I'm honest.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. So sort of like, what is the impact? You talk about women of colour and inclusive feminism. What is the impact of inclusive feminism on Black communities?
Well, I think, you know, it is really important that white women acknowledge that although we have traditionally had barriers and still do retain some barriers in, you know, as regards our gender or our sex, that Black women have the double whammy of discrimination or barriers by gender and race. And I think that feminism, you know, that is inclusive, can really open up that discussion and admit that there are specific issues that come with being Black and being a woman. And that can be issues coming from your own community, Black community, as regards your gender, of which, you know, I'm not an expert because obviously I'm not Black, but it's acknowledging that those two exist and acknowledging my privilege. We call it white privilege, which is fine. I like to call it advantage because, again, I like to use words that are quite descriptive. And I think sometimes when we use words like privilege, maybe a working class white woman wouldn't see herself in that in that way. But if we talk about white advantage, it's a bit more descriptive, that we do have a given advantage from our skin colour, but we may not be in a position of economic privilege. So I think inclusive feminism can have a really positive effect on Black women. I did see Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett in November, and they were talking about race and white women and feminism. And Jada Pinkett said, I am not feminist. She said, I think feminism is an exclusive movement for white women, and I call myself a womanist, because I think it should be, womanist is more inclusive. But I think feminism is quite an established movement, but I think it needs redefining. And I would like to show Black women that it is entirely relevant to their lives, and that if we can join together, that a lot of the synergies, we've got a lot in common, but we must be able to accept the double whammy of race and acknowledge that and deal with those specific issues that come with being Black and a woman.
Right, yeah. Okay. So, you've said that all Black women are affected by this. So is there evidence out there that shows that it's an endemic problem?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of reports recently. We saw the McKinsey report, the Women in the Workplace report, which is done every year, undertaken every year by leanin.org, which is the foundation based in the US, funded by Sheryl Sandberg, the COO, beg your pardon, of Facebook. Right. And, they have started to look at not only gender bias, but racial, gender and sexuality bias, which is really key. And this year, they found that white women earned something like 83 cents on the dollar of a white man, but that Black women and women of colour, not only Black women, but Asian women, were around the 63 cents on the dollar of of white men. So there are reports out there very clearly showing that Black women are discriminated against, even compared to white women. And I think it's really important that we're starting to get these data sets showing that. Now, we also had a report in The Guardian in the UK last week, I think it was, which was done by Oxford University, talking about the discrimination of ethnic minorities, but it didn't specifically focus on gender. But again, it showed that we hadn't made much progress since the 1960s, and that something like so someone from an ethnic minority background would have to send 90% more job applications than a white person. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So we are now seeing data, and data is very important, and that's why I am a big supporter of the ethnicity pay gap campaign, by someone we both know, Diane Grayson, because it's very important to start looking at these, I've used this word, intersections of race and gender, and looking at where those pinch points are, because as a Black woman, you probably instinctively, inherently know that there is bias there because of your gender and your race, but you want to see the data, and we are seeing reports now. And Lean In has, this year, it was a cohort of 60,000 people took part in that survey, which is significant. And I think all the companies they cover add up to about 2 million employees. So we are getting big numbers now, which is good.
Oh, that's really good. I mean, when you mentioned Diane Grayson and the ethnicity pay gap, that just takes me back to the conversation that I had with her. And prior to our conversation, we were just talking in general, and it's when you actually walk yourself through your career pathway, you realize the disparity between, yourself as a Black woman, professional, qualified, competent, and your counterparts who are equally, and the difference in your salary and your career progression. So I can totally relate to everything that you're saying and everything that has been said, you know, in previous conversations. And with the reporting infrastructure, because what you've said is that there are more organizations now looking into reporting around these issues. Can you think of any others that are following suit in this respect?
Well, obviously we've got in the UK, we've got the gender pay gap reporting is now law. Now, I would like to see that broken down also by ethnicity. I think we need to see that. Yeah. The infrastructure is there. I think we need to understand the difference between what white women are getting paid and black women are getting paid, and ethnic minority women are getting paid. And that must not be used to divide women. It's really important that white women and black women are not divided by the powers that be, because that is sometimes in the interests of patriarchal systems, is to say, you know, whilst groups sort of infight between themselves, the bigger picture never gets solved. And I would like to see white women like me saying, this is not good enough. Why is there an ethnicity and gender pay gap for black women, and what are we doing about it? I think until it is hard. We instinctively know it to be true, but it is hard without the data. And I have heard some people say, or particularly in HR, that asking people for their ethnicity is sometimes difficult, and it would require, I mean, I don't know if that's true legally, but it would require asking women for their ethnicity when they join a company, for example. So, you know, there may be some legal barriers to that. Some people may not want to say it, but I think, again, in the interest of transparency, let's get that information, you know, recorded, and let's get that in a report so we can see things. It's very difficult to do something until you've seen it. So, yes. I mean, there is no reason why the gender pay gap reporting cannot be extended to ethnicity. The systems are there. It's just really about the companies involved asking their employees what their ethnicities are, and the employees being willing to give that on the basis that it will be used responsibly for that purpose.
Yeah, as long as that is disseminated in a clear and concise way. You know, correct. An equitable platform for all is nirvana, is the end goal. But you know, the reality of the situation is, you know, how long will it take us to get there? You know, and thinking about this, and thank you for sharing what you shared, Natasha. You know, curious to know, what initiatives have you done to raise the awareness and your passion?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, Genderbuzz is an inclusive platform, full stop. And I encourage women of colour to join our platform. It is definitely not a platform exclusively for white middle class women. I don't want that. I personally speak out all the time and support black women. I do it online. I am part, you know, as one of the first supporters, and to be quite honest, I don't think I've seen any other white women supporting the ethnicity pay gap campaign launched by Diane, but I bought my t-shirt, I sent my photo, and she knows that I've got her back on there, and if I'm asked, I will always support her. I buy in black women's businesses, so I strive to buy services from black women. I worked with a fantastic woman called Andrea Watts, who runs a sort of business that does, it's like video, not video boarding, but vision boarding, but much more complicated than that. So I try and look where I spend my money as well, and I visibly support women of colour in all their endeavours. You know, I don't shy away from saying things on Twitter. I don't shy away. I did a video last week for Instagram, you know, saying that I am an ally of black women. I'm out there, I support you, and I take my lead from you, really.
Okay, brilliant. That's great stuff. And I'm hoping that others will follow suit and join the ethnicity pay gap movement. So, I mean, how can others support the movement if they're interested?
Well, first things first is follow Diane Grayson on LinkedIn, because she is leading that. And I would say to all white women, you know, diversify your connections on social media. And I got this from June Sarpong, actually. I bought her book, Diversify. I mean, I'd already sort of from, I would say up until about 4 years ago, my network of people was mainly white. And I gradually have, you know, pushed myself to connect with lots more black women and women of colour. And when I bought June Sarpong's book, Diversify, she said, you know, ask yourself, how many women of colour are you actually connected with? How many women of colour have you met? How many women of colour friends do you have? And I would say the same, you know, to black women. How many white women friends do you have? And to really diversify your network and think, you know, start that with making connections on LinkedIn. You see me, I'm all the time chatting with black women. I love it. It's great. I love the conversations we have. You know, I love the energy. I love the boldness. So I'm out there and I enjoy it, really. And I think, you know, white women could do that more. And you know, so could black women, to be honest, and we can come together and connect, and that is really important on a one-to-one personal level, as you know, because then you do get to see that person's perspective, and it's much easier when you know that person personally. I mean, I went out for lunch with a black woman that I met online. We had a really good laugh, you know, in the summer. I was like, she goes, oh, should we go out for lunch? She's like, yeah, let's do it. You know, why not? And I always learn something. I think it's that point of being open to learn from people who are in that position. And I think Diane is doing an amazing job raising awareness of the ethnicity pay gap and leading from the front. So I would say to any women, get behind Diane's campaign. She is someone who is out there batting for, you know, ethnic minority women. I know she doesn't like that phrase, but sometimes, you know, sometimes I make a misstep and maybe use a term like, you know, people use BAME or black women, whatever. You know, I know we can make missteps, but, you know, she is out there, you know, batting for women of colour and just support her in her efforts. Vocally, it's about being vocal and showing up for black women. It really is.
It's you know, I agree with everything that you said. It's about understanding and as you said, connecting with other women that are not like you. You know, being able to sort of like see things from a different perspective and synergize as well, especially the skill sets, because you don't know what you know. People often judge by what they see and or what they've heard. So they will take the lead off somebody else and say, oh, this person is not right, because somebody may not have gelled with them, so therefore they're not good. And that actually blocks the connections and networking with other people, where you could take the collaborative aspect further forward. Now, I've connected with a lot of white women, both here in the UK, well, actually it's all over the globe, because I like connecting with people and I like sharing experiences, and that's how we've connected. And I think it's through Diane, through the
that's right.
And also the post. Absolutely. It's about accepting, but also getting to know the person. And for me, you know, asking you to have a conversation is the next step for me to sort of really get to know where you're coming from, what you're doing, what your passions are, sharing it with my connections and the wider networks. But what I wanted to ask you, Natasha, is what would you like to see happen with the cause? with your cause, with Diane's cause, you know, what would you like to see happen going forwards?
You know, I would really like to see a coming together, like a conference, actually. Maybe a conference could be an easy thing to do, of white and black women together and to talk about feminism and to say, right, what can we all do together to bring gender equality to reality? Because, you know, we're talking about this in the Western world, where there's lots of different ethnicities together. But, you know, there are countries, you know, let's say India, where, you know, is majority women of colour. So we do need to have a cohesive idea of what feminism and gender equality means to all women in the world. And I know that Jada Pinkett, for example, is joining the Makers Conference, which is Makers is a media sort of led initiative and company in the US to talk about this very subject. And I think we do need to broach it. I'd like to see a conference in the UK, all women coming together, you know, talking about their experiences. And I'd like to see white women listening to those experiences and taking that on board. And, you know, let's dissolve this idea that, you know, we do all have our differences because we're individuals, but let's not let that stop us from the goal of gender equality, which will benefit. I am so sure that gender equality across the board will benefit the world, all over the world, will bring a lot more compassion to the world, empathy, acting with empathy. And I think women are the driver for that, actually. We've got huge problems like climate change up against that. Women in countries that are severely affected by climate change, we're talking Africa, Asia, with extreme climate swings, women will bear the brunt of this. Did you know that 90% of the world's farmers are women, for example?
Yeah.
You know, we think about farming as a man's job, but actually 90% of farmers are women. And, you know, we cannot allow ethnicity to be a barrier to gender equality. I mean, we just can't. So I'd like to see more conferences that are led by black women, with white women attending, you know, with black women at the fore, women of colour at the fore. We need more stage sharing. We need more platform sharing. And, you know, that's what I would like to see. Definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I mean, more collaborative working, you know, as I said, Nirvana, that would be ideal. I'd be up for that as well, because we do, and we know far too much to continue walking down the same pathway with a fence in between, because that's what I see. So what encouragement would you give someone who is passionate about their cause but don't know sort of what to do or how to go about making their voices heard? What would you encourage them and say?
Well, I can only say how I started out. I mean, I knew I wanted to do something about gender equality. I knew it was an important subject to me. And honestly, I started out by making a slideshow in my bedroom. I'm not even joking. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true, because you probably know as well as I do that all entrepreneurs are poor to start off with. You know, you don't make any money at the beginning. So you just got to start where you are. And I think if you've got an idea, write it down or speak it out. Social media gives you the opportunity to say something. You know, follow someone you admire in that field and reply to them on Twitter, or get involved in a conversation on LinkedIn. See how that feels. I think often what stops us is that fear. You know, I've posted things before and I thought, oh my God, I feel so fearful posting that. I'm going to get a barrage of criticism. Now, I may have had one or two critics, and I do have trolls, but, you know, I've got used to it. I've developed a much thicker skin, but the good outweighs the bad, always. I've met some amazing people just by commenting on social media posts. So I think We've all got phones, most of us. We can all comment on a post and start off with a like, and then go to a comment and say, I support you, Jacqueline, or I agree with you, Natasha. I think that gets you in the mix. It gets you in the conversation. And as you begin to learn more about the subject, then you can say more. I would also recommend reading. I've read so many books from a diverse set of authors on gender equality. And over the years, I've read, you know, gender equality books written by men, by women, by you know, black women, white women. I think it's really important, if you are very interested in a subject, to read. It really is. Read on the tube, read some articles, read on your way to work, listen to podcasts. You know, start with all the equipment you've got on your phone, you know, and go from there. And if it develops into more than just a passion, then you could start a little business on the side.
Oh, that's fantastic. Natasha, it's been fantastic talking to you, and I could continue talking to you,
yes.
but we know that time doesn't permit. Now, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, how would they be able to reach you?
So if you are a business owner and you're female-led, then please do sign up to our platform, genderbuzz.com. It's free to sign up, and it's a directory of female businesses, so please do that. If you want to hear my views on feminism, gender equality, then you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn and on Instagram, all under the Genderbuzz hashtag, the name, really. So if you search Genderbuzz, I'm on all the social media platforms. I'm not as active on Facebook, I will say. I tend to be quite active on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. I think I'll be signing up with Genderbuzz. And
Great.
Thank you very much for taking the time out to have this conversation with me.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Jacqueline. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. And anyone that's listening, please do contact Natasha if you want to get involved in with Genderbuzz and you're interested in what she's saying. Today's conversation has been with Natasha Stromberg, and we have been talking about inclusive feminism. Thank you very much. See you soon.